And happy Saturday to you, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Into the Absurd. I'm your host, Tina Brock, and on today's show, Sonja Robson, David Robson. They are a couple in art, in life, and I can't wait to talk to them about their individual joy and passions and what they create together. It's a long association here on Into the Absurd, and I'm very delighted that they're our guests today because we are celebrating 1 year that we have been on, I would say on the air, but in the airwaves here on Into the Absurd. It was just a year ago that we launched this maiden voyage, and along with Bob Schmidt and Erica Holscher, we have not missed a show this year, and we just want to thank all of you who have been there with us. It really was a way for us to stay connected, to keep creating, to keep thinking about what art could be and can be as we contemplate now getting back onto the stage. And the great part is we're going to be here. We're going to be doing the backstage tour and talking about making that work happen. So thank you so very much to everybody who's joined us around the world. This show has been seen by, gosh, 850,000 plus people over the last year. And that's just hard to imagine when you think that our average audience on the stage is somewhere between 50 and 100 people. So some things to come out of the pandemic are that you can really reach audiences around the world who have a very niche interest. So with that in mind, thanks so much for being here and help us celebrating. We're going to bring Eric and Bob on at the end of the show just to say hi and wave a celebratory virtual drink. But let's get to our guests for today. David Robson. I got it right, David Robson and Sonja Robson. I've known them for so many years, and I am so delighted to be able to share their work with you today, what they're working on as friends and as artists. David, of course, is a playwright. Sonja is an actress who has recently decided or discovered or made palpable her love of photography with her company Sonja's Eye. So let's bring them both to the table now. We'll take your questions and we'll dig into the art of playwriting, the art of being an actress, and also of being a photographer. So hey, and welcome
hey.
To both of you.
Hey there.
And David, I can't believe I did it.
You did what?
That I said Robson again. When how many years? I'm so sorry. It's Robson, son of Rob. It is son of Rob.
I should have corrected you years ago, but I just didn't. I don't know. I just couldn't.
I'm so embarrassed, and then I do it on the show.
It's an easy mistake to make, Tina.
It's Robson. So with that in mind, I'm so excited, Sonja, to talk to you about your latest endeavor. We've shared so many hours on stage. In the Bald Soprano and about 1,500 productions that you've done for the IRC and enjoyed every single minute of it. Now I'm enamored with the beauty that you're bringing to your photography and combining these aspects. And you're sitting in front of one of your photographs tonight, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a picture of David actually on Montauk Point on Long Island. We went there last November. And yeah, I played around with the sky a little bit, but yeah.
It makes me happy to hear that you believe you found this thing that was in your life for so many years. You wrote that your older brother had given you, was it a Minolta?
It was a Minolta. It was here in Wilmington, Delaware. I grew up in Sweden, but my father was American, and I'd visit my father every summer, but he died when he was much older. He was born in 1894. Whole different story. Anyway, my brother is 42 years older than I was. So he took me to a camera store because I expressed an interest in photography. Sonja, I'm going to show you this camera store and I'm going to help you buy this camera. And he was very fatherly, and it was very sweet. And I was 16 at the time, and I just thought, this is what I want to do. But then I fell in love with acting, and that was a whole different thing. So,
well, when you write that I want to get it right, that you're capturing the essence or your sense. I mean, that we understand that is, what photography is. But I'm so curious as to when you're working with a subject, an actor, a performer in your work. Do you wait for it? Do you coax it? How do you know when you've gotten there? You just know?
Yes and no. I start out most people, everybody, I'd say, is very nervous in front of the camera, especially when they've come in to have portraits done of just them. So I try my best to make them feel at ease, but I'm nervous too. I'm nervous every time, just like with acting. I get nervous because I want it to go well and I don't want something to go wrong. But I just start joking around and I say really stupid stuff. And it makes people laugh and it makes people relax. And I don't know. I mean, I have been told that I bring out, I make people feel really comfortable and I let them have a lot of fun. I don't know how I do that exactly. I feel like it's a symbiotic kind of relationship, just like on stage, like with you and me, when we're on stage, it's like we have to work together on this thing and let's see what we can create. I don't know.
Yeah. And then somehow the result is larger than the sum of the parts sometimes, because you said it's
I hope so. I mean, I try.
David, is there something about Sonja, like over this during the time when she's been exploring with Sonja's eye, is there some aspect of her that is different in a way than when, say, she's working on a play?
Oh, that's a good question.
That is a good question. You didn't warn me about this, Tina, but that's okay.
I know I'm putting you on the spot. I really am, but
okay. No, you're right. I mean, we've been locked down, right? We were locked down for quite a while, and she was exploring this kind of. I mean, she's always had a great eye, and she's always had a love of the visual arts. You know, I think that one similarity is there's an empathy that Sonja brings to the work that she does that I think shows in both her photography, but also shows on stage. And, you know, she was mentioning how she kind of gets her subjects a little looser. She's great on stage with that too. She's a wonderful comedian. And, you know, we were in a play together years ago. That's how I first met her. And she was just very funny. And so she has kind of a natural gift for being able to bring out, to make people laugh, to bring out the best in people. And in terms of things that are different,
I'm hiding in my corner behind the screen.
Yeah, that's true. She kind of goes into her hole and she starts working her Photoshop. And boy, you don't want to disturb her. You don't want to poke the bear, as they say, because, you know, she gets into it, as I do with my writing, and she just gets into a zone, as I think
you have a door. I don't have a door. I had to create a room.
I do have a door. You can't see it here because this is a virtual background, but I have a door, and she doesn't. So she kind of envelops herself. And so there's nothing that's surprised me because, you know, I've seen her creativity from the beginning when she started going to school for acting, when we acted on stage together. And but it's been wonderful to see this part of her and to see how talented she is and how hard she works on it. Because I always figure talent's kind of a dime a dozen. Everybody's got some kind of talent, but it's the work that you put into it. It's the hard work that makes the difference. And so, you know, she works so hard at it, and she's a hard worker by nature, but it's been wonderful to see her kind of blossom with this new art form.
I love the fact that you're coming up on an anniversary. We were talking about it before the show, and how you both met at Stagecrafters, right? Many moons ago in a production where you were auditioning together.
Yeah, I was in graduate school at the time. I was going to St. Joe's, and I was kind of wrapping up my graduate degree. And a friend of mine was directing a play at Stagecrafters, which is a community theater in Chestnut Hill in Philadelphia. And she said, do you want to come and audition for this play? It's called The Foreigner. It's very funny. You'd, I think, be good for it. And I had some extra time, and I thought, sure. So I went down on a Monday night, right? Sonja, it was a Monday night, as it usually is for auditions. And I walked down 5 minutes from the place where I was living with a couple of my buddies, 1990, August of 1990.
You were 23.
Going on 24, that's right. Yes. So I walked down there, I saw my friend Loretta, who was directing the play. I know, crazy. And I read the sides and prepared to audition. And so when it was my turn, I got up onto the stage, and it so happened that I was auditioning with this young woman. Didn't know her age. She just was beautiful. And we started auditioning together, and my mouth was very dry at the time, partly because I was nervous, even though I was trying not to act nervous. And then partly because, you know, there was this lovely woman across from me. And during the audition, I, by mistake, sprayed spittle on her. You know, when your mouth gets dry, that happens sometimes. And I was really embarrassed at the moment, but when the audition was done, somewhere in my mind, I knew this was my in. So I approached her afterward, and I extended my hand, and I said, "Hi, I'm David Robson. I'm sorry I spit in your face." And we both got the part. I played a minister who was secretly a member of the KKK, if you know the play, and she played kind of the ingenue of the play. And that was a long time ago. That's how we met. Sonja, please.
Wow.
Yeah.
And since then, Sonja, you've been to theater school, and David, you've had quite a career in playwriting. And I guess, Sonja, as you work on your photography now, does theater come into your space, in your head anymore?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I started the series, and if you look at my website, it's called the Hollywood series, and I've collected a bunch of different retro costumes and bought some things on Amazon in different sizes and stuff that are vintage looking from the 1940s. I have a thing for the 1940s because my mother was a model during that time, and I have all these gorgeous pictures of her from Paris and New York and stuff like that. And I love the way the light would hit, how they photographed people then. So I've been trying to recreate that in some kind of way, but I'm taking my own spin on it. But what I did was, with my daughter, I dressed her up, I did her makeup, and I'm like, let's play. And I put her in front of the camera, and she's just a natural. I put a cigarette in her hand, and, you know, and I said, you know what you remind me of? You're a girl in one of those old dance halls, you know, 25 cents a dance, and you're bored as hell because every boy in the place wants to dance with you, and you're just so over it. And you're like, no, this is my smoke break. And then I did one of Celeste.
Celeste Walker.
Celeste Walker, and she's very Italian looking. And I thought, you know what you're an Italian woman of a certain age. You've never been to America. You don't speak English. You're waiting in a New York hotel for this suitor or something, and you're just sitting there with your martini looking over your shoulder. And it just works so well. So it's like I've tapped into that, but that's something that comes up when I just see the people sitting there. I'm like, oh, this is what this reminds me of. And then they play into it. So it's really, that's fun.
And it must help that you're throwing out, through your imagination scenarios, which really spark their imagination, which then together you can create this little play in a series of shots.
I want to do more of those kind of Hollywood series. So if anybody's interested.
You're up, Tina, you're up.
What's that? Yes. Oh gosh, I'd love to do that. I would love to do that, Sonja.
And I had an idea. Well, Celeste had the idea to have a calendar for next year. For every month, there's going to be a different person, women, and it's going to contribute to women theater artists in Philadelphia.
Oh, that's a great idea.
I know, and
that's a wonderful idea, Sonja. I love the fact that this thing that you discovered so many years ago that was introduced to you by someone in your family has been with you for so long, because we've been watching, for a while, you retouching photos and you'll post them on Facebook, and you could see the joy of that really coming through. And so lovely to see, you taking it really to, and to be so involved in it. David, when you're working, are you really structured in your writing practice? Do you have a time you write every day? Do you kind of do the same thing? Do you have to have certain things in place in order, or do you sit when it strikes you?
I wish I had that discipline to be able to do that. I tend to kind of work in cycles. So I find something interesting and I start reading about it, whether it's a newspaper report or a story or some subject matter that's really interesting to me. And it doesn't mean it's always going to become a play, but it's, I find that when I'm interested in something and I keep going back to it, I start to think, there might be something to this. What kind of story could I create? And, I'm never out of ideas for stories. A lot of time, it's the writing of the play that's the tough part. The ideas come, they're all over the place. For example, when I was a young man, before, I guess when I was hitting puberty or so, this is a somewhat naughty story. I hope you can handle it. I happened to discover a copy of a book that was very popular in the 70s. And it was kind of a famous breakthrough kind of book at the time. It's called The Joy of Sex. And I happened to discover my mother's copy of it. And I became very interested because, of course, not only are there words, but there are pictures, illustrations. And for some reason, over the last maybe 10 years ago, I laughed thinking that, oh yeah, I remember when I did that. And I became fascinated with the man who wrote this. His name was Alex Comfort, and he became kind of a celebrity. Yet at the same time, he was a British man and he was quite prudish in some ways. And so suddenly what came to me was this idea about this young woman who's kind of lost and unsure of herself. And who does she go to? But she goes to the guru of the time, if you will, about relationships and intimacy. She goes to Alex Comfort and seeks him out for advice. And it's a very avuncular kind of relationship. It's not weird or anything. I didn't want to make it weird. That was not my intention. She comes seeking advice about her own love life that she's starting to have. And, he becomes very protective of her. So even though I had the idea years ago, I didn't really write it until during the pandemic. And we had a reading of it maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And it was great. It was really funny. And it was really fun. And I got to play with like British accents and Britishisms. And it was just a blast. So to quote Edward Albee, or to paraphrase him, if somebody says, how long did it take you to write the play? The answer is my whole life. You never know when something's going to hit you again, and it's going to inspire something. So I do not sit down every day. But the ideas are always there.
Do you have a playwright that you turn to that if you feel like you need a dose of, I don't know, grounding or inspiration or?
I like Edward Albee a lot. I try to read the plays that are new, that are out, that people are talking about. Like, for example, a play that I want to read that I haven't, but was quite controversial on Broadway, which is called Slave Play. So I try to keep up with contemporary plays. I also tend, maybe because of my Scandinavian wife, to read some of the old stuff like Ibsen and Strindberg, who I love a lot. And there's something about Strindberg that I like very much, which is he really gets to the point very quickly. One of my favorite plays by him is a play called The Father. And this was written at a time before DNA testing. And basically the play is about a woman who tweaks her husband by saying, you think you're the father of our child, but how do you really know?
Yeah.
And it flips him out. He ends up kind of going insane. And what I love about it is it's so in your face. It's just so there. It's deep, but plot-wise, it just really moves. And I love that about it. So I love those plays. I read a lot about writers, but those are some things that I read.
Yeah, I read The Father again during the pandemic. It's an extraordinary play. Yeah. I think, David, I'd love for you to tell the story about your play being selected and done, and the quite sterling audience of critics who commented to you while your wife cried in the audience. Tell us that story.
So, I started writing poetry years ago. I wrote different things, fiction, poetry, and then, I'd grown up loving plays. My mom would take me to the theater, Philadelphia Theatre Company, when I was a young man. And so I really grew to love theater. And so in the mid-90s, late 90s, I really started seriously writing plays. Started with 10-minute plays, started writing full-length plays. funny, some not funny, dramas, comedies, all this stuff. And so I submitted a play to something called, it doesn't exist anymore, called the Last Frontier Theater Conference. It's now the Great Plains Theater Conference. It moved for a variety of reasons. And I submitted a play on a whim. And as often, I tend to choose very easy topics to write about. I chose to write this play in 2003 about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which I knew about mostly from friends and from reading about it. And I thought, this isn't bad. I'm going to send it off to this theater conference. And who knows, maybe they'll do it, whatever. So I don't know how many scripts they get, but I was lucky enough that they selected 8 scripts for their main stage performance, staged reading. And my play was called Out of Place. And they chose it. They chose it as one of 8 that they would present at this thing. And I was really excited because when I found out who the, I won't call them the jury, Tina, but the Star Chamber, whatever you want to call them, would be critiquing my play, it was, this is 2004, Edward Albee, Tony Kushner, John Guare, Romulus Linney, who you may not know him, mostly an off-Broadway playwright. I'm leaving somebody out.
And the director.
Lloyd Richards, who famously directed the Broadway production, the original production of Raisin in the Sun in the 1950s. So we've got this Star Chamber, and so I am kind of freaking out that my play is going to be presented in front of these people. And in intermission, it seemed to be going really, really well, because the director of the stage reading came to me and said, they want to know, they called me over, Dave, and they wanted to know if you were Israeli or Palestinian. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. They don't know because it must feel so real and so accurate. And this is great. This is great. So then at the end, Edward Albee, who was leading the panel, got up, and he had a couple small critiques. His big critique was when people were speaking Arabic, because of course they'd have to be speaking English so we could understand them for an American audience. He critiqued that I didn't use any contractions. That was kind of odd, but he seemed to like the play well enough. Tony Kushner said he was offended, and he was offended because the play, and he was right, was loosely based on a real person, a Palestinian American named Edward Said, who coined the term Orientalism. And so Kushner rightly saw that my play echoed Said's experience to some degree, although it was thinly veiled. But he was offended that I chose to write about this. Then came John Guare, who really hated my play. And he said he hated it because I wasn't supposed to write about this topic. This was a topic that someone who was neither Israeli nor Palestinian, somebody who didn't know it from the inside out, should write about. And he kind of was on his high horse for a while. That might be where Sonja started crying, because he kind of went on and on and on about it. And
yeah, it was awful.
What do they say? To quote The Simpsons, an old episode, he was spiritually depancing me in front of hundreds of people.
And I have pictures of you.
I'm like
so embarrassed. Oh, it was awful.
Were you up on the stage, David, alongside them?
It wasn't a stage, but I was alongside them.
Oh,
right?
okay.
There's a photograph.
Yeah, I have a picture of all of them together, and you're wearing a red Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, what a jerk. It was the guy in the Hawaiian shirt. You suck, dude. Oh. Anyway, so the final person, or one of the final people, was Lloyd Richards, who also directed August Wilson's early plays on Broadway and off. And he looked at the other panelists and he said to them, all of you have taken risks. All of you have had the courage enough, and I'm paraphrasing, to write about things that are hard to write about. This playwright has decided to do that. And you're faulting him for this. I think he was commenting particularly on Guare's point. And he said, that's the part that I remember. But, he had some praise for the play. He basically, though, was focused on the other panelists who he felt, particularly Guare, who cares, felt were being too tough on me in terms of, you shouldn't write about this. Well, I always thought, I don't know where I got this idea that, as a writer, you have to write about the hard things. Whether you're successful at doing it all the time, I don't know. And so I can't speak to the success of the play. It's a long time ago. It had some readings after that. It was never produced fully, which doesn't necessarily mean anything because so many wonderful plays never get produced by people. And I remember going back to the hotel room after, I'd been through the ringer, I'd run the gauntlet. And it was pretty hard. And I said to Sonja afterward, I'm not sure that any review I ever get will hurt me or touch me, because I felt like I was, they put me in that spotlight in a way that was really uncomfortable.
You didn't want to write at all anymore. You had a moment where you just never wanted to write again.
Yeah, I mean, I felt hurt, but I think I also felt exposed. I felt like, oh man, this is really hurtful. And it was interesting because a couple days later, I talked to Lloyd Richards. He was very kind. I talked briefly to Albee. He was very kind as well. And I remember the person who seemed most disturbed by the comments was John Guare. He came to me afterward and he said, he didn't apologize, nor was I asking him to, but he said, I just think that this is hard stuff to write about. And the sense I got was that he felt that maybe I wasn't as experienced a playwright, that maybe with more experience, maybe I'm putting a nice spin on it, but maybe he was right. Maybe my skills weren't worthy of that task. And to write about that complex topic is a really, really hard thing to do. But I've not stopped writing about hard things. And sometimes it turns out well, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think you got to write about the hard stuff. The easy stuff's the easy stuff.
What would the easy stuff, how do you know it's hard? Just because it is hard for you to do? Is it hard emotionally? The subject matter is hard. The amount of research that you have to do, the topic is controversial. What would place something?
I think it's different for every writer. For me, maybe it's not even a question of easy or hard, but I tend to be attracted to subjects that I have a lot of questions about, and that I can't always verbalize those questions. Writing something on the death penalty, which is an interesting topic, but doesn't interest me personally as a writer. To me, it would be, well, what are some of the questions? And it's the questions about the topics that really drive me, and they drive me to read, and they drive me to think, and most of all, they drive me to write, because I find that the questions for me get answered on some level by writing about them. It's the process of writing that helps me work through it. So it's, for me, certainly, I wouldn't call it therapy, and I know for some writers, writing is therapy. I enjoy doing it. I hate doing it. It's all of the above, right? It's everything. But when I have questions about something, a couple of years ago, I wrote a play that I think Tina saw an earlier version of, about two men. And throughout my life, I think one question I've had is, well, what is manhood? What does it mean to be a man? Can you be a man and still do this or that or the other thing? And I found a vehicle. I found subject matter. I found a story that would allow me to kind of work out some of those issues through dialogue. So it's not me talking, it's the characters. And in a weird way, I'm just listening to them. In a weird way, I'm just listening to them have the conversation and bring up things that I find interesting and thought-provoking and hard and painful and difficult to solve. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. Do you feel that it's hard for you to, when you've seen a production happen, or even when you don't see a production happen, but you get to the end of it, is it hard for you to, I guess there's two questions. Do you feel like you've worked through some of that? Are you aware that you've worked it through, the questions that you had? Does it feel like you've discovered something? And is that in any way correlated to sort of any loosely defined success that you would place on it?
It's weird because often I don't see those things. The things I write about, I don't see my connection to them. Like, Faulkner famously said, you write about what you know. And I see his point, but I think that there's more to what he said than meets the eye. I mean, what I know is I'm a middle-aged white guy, and I have no interest in directly writing about that experience because I understand that experience for the most part. You know, I'm able to function and live in the world. I'm interested in asking questions about other experiences. And it was weird because when a play of mine that I was alluding to a moment ago that relates, among other things, to manhood and masculinity, Playing the Assassin was done. I have a long story short. I have an estranged relationship with my father's side of the family, and strangely, right around the time that play was done for the first time at Interact Theater in Philadelphia, a theater company, Tina. I talked to my aunt, who was a part of my father's family, and we talked, and she congratulated me on a positive review I'd gotten in the paper. And she said, wow, seems like it was a play about your dad. And it wasn't until she said that, because I'm a little slow. It wasn't until she said that, I'm like, is it? Maybe it is. So there usually isn't a eureka moment, not at all. Because at that point, you're just into the character's experience. I'm not thinking, how does the character's experience reflect on me? At that point, it's too distant from me.
Yeah. Did you ever think that, Sonja?
What, that it was about his dad?
In iterations of it, did it ever occur to you?
No, it never did. No.
I hide it well, right, Sonja?
Yeah, you do. But, you know, looking back on a lot of your plays, I feel like there's often this thing about manhood and father and son, or older man, or a protege of a younger man. You know, even in that Doctors Without Borders play,
Man Measures Man.
Man Measures Man. Just listen to the title. I mean, it's about that kind of stuff.
And it's weird because even when my characters are female, you're right, Sonja, there's often this kind of protege mentor relationship, which isn't a conscious thing, I don't think. And what's interesting, because now that you're making me think of it, Sonja, when I met Sonja, she had a child, and the child was 5 going on 6. And, you know, my dad wasn't around. So it was all this complicated family stuff in my life and her life. And I don't know. I think if I directly said, I'm going to write about fathers and sons, I wouldn't write about it because, at least on the surface, it doesn't interest me. It's the characters and the particular situations that interest me. So in a way, I have to fool myself.
It's the working through of it.
Yes.
David, somebody asked, Fred Barfoot asked if we have a favorite thing that we worked on together. And I'll have to say it was A Few Small Repairs, because we started a theater company.
It was a one-off theater company.
It was a one-play theater company. And we had it done on Second Stage in 2007 and spent a lot of money on it. It was crazy, but that, I think, is the favorite role I've ever had. It was based on Grey Gardens. It was called A Few Small Repairs, and you wrote it so beautifully. It was directed by Bill Raudebush, and Hazel Bowers played
she was awesome.
Big Alice, and I was Little Alice.
It was very thinly veiled. I mean, we had watched we watched Grey Gardens and loved it so much, but I wanted to know more. I had more questions. If you've ever seen Grey Gardens, it probably raises a lot of questions. And to me, that's what good theater does, right? It raises a lot of questions. And, you know, the play doesn't, I hope, always answer the questions. You know, it often leaves it to the audience to answer at least some of them. Because when you go to the theater, I guess that's the kind of theater I like, Tina, is that, you know, it raises more questions than it answers, because it leaves me something as an audience member to contemplate when I leave. And you're right, Sonja. I mean, that was a really fun thing to work on together.
It was amazing.
And
remember, Ingrid was in the audience, and she was like 5 or no, she was 6, and she cried. When I cried on stage, she cried. It was so cute.
Oh.
And it was weird because, you know, at first we're like, do we really want to do this together? But Bill Raudebush, the director, really talented director, he was able to help us draw that line pretty clearly, and that was really helpful. So, you know, I'd drive Bill home in the car, and Sonja would be in her car going home on her own, and I'd say to Bill, so what do you think about scene 2? Do you think Sonja could give it a little more of this or give it a little more of that? And then he would get it, you know, he would transmit that message from the director's standpoint to her, because I wanted to remain married.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
always a good thing.
having an intermediary is that sounds like a perfect Bill sounds like a perfect person to be that person. And
He was.
just
He
you
was
talking
great.
about Ingrid, Sonja, just reminds me of her being on stage in both The Mad Woman of Chaillot, the Girardot
right.
play, when she was on
Yes.
stage. We had like 20 some odd people in Studio 5 over the Walnut Street, and her just sweet little, and then in the castle again, in the
Yes.
when we did
She was
Kafka's The
12
Castle,
then.
she was 12. And just how much it adds to have a younger energy, just that sort of the joy of that age in a cast, you know, that size.
That was really fun.
Is there, when you, Sonja, are thinking about, or when you were and are still acting, do you think about what is it that makes your decision about whether you want to do something or not? Is it the people? Is it the script? Is
Tina in it?
You're the first person that's ever said that.
I don't know.
In the history of the world, I love you.
You get me. I have so much fun. I mean, there's so many times we've been on stage where I just like I can't have more fun. And I know it's not always, you know, there's always some.
Just say it. There's always something happening. There's some drama happening.
There's always drama going on.
Right.
But, you know, there's things I love about acting. And it's being in the moment on stage. The things I hate about acting is preparation, not rehearsal so much, but preparation before going on stage. I am usually so nervous that I'm like, why the heck do I do this? Why do I do this? Why do I put myself through this? And
those are the exact words you use every time, Sonja, when we're in the dressing room at the Bethany Mission Gallery, every single time. And well, there's 2 times with the bald soprano, but we just sit there on the bed and looking at each other going, and I'm in the same boat with you. So we're like, why do we do this? Why are we doing this to each other?
Why?
You know,
why?
And then just have so much fun. So it's a story that's told often.
But I often say that acting sucks because it does. There's so much work involved and there's very little, you know, I don't know. I never feel fully satisfied. I never feel like I did exactly what I wanted to do until I look back later and I'm like, oh, man, I should have done that. I should have done this, but then it's gone.
You know, Sonja, I think that's, you know, when you kind of lost your interest in acting for a while, it seems like, tell me if I'm wrong, that's what you were missing. You weren't having fun anymore for a variety of reasons. You just weren't having as much fun. But when you started working with Tina, this is a Tina Love Fest, she said, you know, I always have fun with Tina, that we have fun, we laugh, and we're goofy. And so that's why right? Would that be fair to say, Sonja?
It is fair to say. I mean, a big thing that made me lose interest was also having my baby. Having my baby.
What a lovely way of saying
how much I love you.
That's Paul Anka. That's an old song.
I was at the Wilma Theater in 2001 when September 11th, and my daughter Ingrid was there. It was David's birthday. September 11th is David's birthday. And I was really ill then because Ingrid was still nursing, and I had worn myself down. I had worked at a Montessori school all summer and got an Epstein-Barr virus. I was seriously ill. And I always wanted to work at the Wilma and with Blanca, and it was such a wonderful experience, but I was seriously, seriously ill. And that really made me unhappy. And then I wanted to be at home with my daughter, and I was still nursing her. And then on top of that, September 11th happened, and it was the beginning of Tech Week. It was on a Tuesday, and Ingrid was there with me. It was David's birthday. It's like all came together, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't be away from home this many hours in a day, and it was really difficult. It Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of, I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of things converging at one
Yeah.
point, which made
And illness on top of it. I mean,
Right.
it was just not.
right. And I do think, I mean, I love your Marion Seldes story. Tell us that. Marion Seldes, the great actress that
Oh,
worked in
God,
so
she was-
many
I
Edward
have
Albee
pictures
plays.
of- I should have sent pictures of her and me. She's basically enveloping me almost like a praying mantis. She was trying to counsel me on theater. It was so cute.
She was very theatrical, right? Just as a person.
Very theatrical. Well, I came with David to this Alaska theater conference where all these famous people were. And I decided to take a master class with her. And I did some old monologue I had, and she gave me some great advice on it. But at one point I asked her, I said, I just have a question. Have you ever lost your passion for theater or your passion for acting? And she looked at me like she was almost horrified. No, never. I'm like, oh, okay.
It's like, throw me a bone, Marion, for God's sake.
You guys killed it at that conference. I just want to say, like, you know.
Yeah, right, exactly.
No, but the fact that you were in the same room with all, and I mean, David, the fact that you were getting critique from such a stellar panel of playwrights, you know, not to diminish in any way how hard it was to hear that. And the fact that, Sonja, you were within, you know, a monologue of Marion Seldes and able to just breathe in that brilliance is quite something.
She was very sweet. I really liked her a lot.
Nice lady.
Oh, and the other guy, the guy that
oh yeah, Courtney Vance, who's Angela
Courtney
Bassett's
Vance, yes.
well.
I took a class with him too. He was great. And he was telling me about him and his wife, how they were trying to have children, and there was a whole thing, fertility and stuff. It was
Wow.
That's a long time ago. My God, 2004.
Yeah, his kids are like.
Yeah, they're probably teenagers by now.
They are.
Did you ask him if he ever lost his passion for it, Sonja?
I might have.
He was probably afraid by then. No.
He probably said, hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I think Marion Seldes, when she said that, she also did this. No.
I think she did.
I love the fact that she looked at me horrified and said, you know, no.
I don't know if she was horrified, but that's the way it felt.
I want, oh gosh, I want to make sure I get this. Robin says, I love that you two met partly by David spitting on Sonja. It seems like the beginning of a very good rom-com. And I also was thinking about how David, like, how pre-pandemic, you know, like I know I'm that way, Sonja. You've been in my spray of fire many times in the Bald Soprano, you know, and I'm thinking, oh Lord, this would be just such not a good, like, Sonja wouldn't be laughing anymore if we were out on stage now, you know, post pandemic, and you know, the things that we take for granted, just being so close in proximity and whatnot. It's interesting. David, I wanted to ask you, there's a in one of the interviews that you did for Playing the Assassin, about the life, or about a very specific incident in Jack Tatum's life. You read in the paper, and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, Jack Tatum, this was the headline when he passed. Jack Tatum, whose tackle paralyzed a player, dies at 61. And you said you read that article and you felt like there was unfinished business there, if I'm paraphrasing correctly. And I'm interested in knowing, what did you see as the unfinished business in that story of this former, you know, this football player, this safety for?
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I loved football, and you know, I can still appreciate the game, although with head injuries and so forth, it's more difficult. But I think that, you know, what really struck me about that headline, it inspired the play. First of all, Jack Tatum, who was a hard-hitting football player, defensive player, he was only 61 when he died, and the headline basically said, despite all his accomplishments, and he had many as a football player, this was what he'd be remembered by, that his hit had paralyzed another man. And that really disturbed me. You know, this idea, Brian Stevenson, who wrote a great book called Just Mercy, about the inequities in our justice system, especially as it relates to people of color. Said, who wants to be remembered for one thing, for the worst thing you've done? That's a line in the book. Who would want that? And that rang true to me. And so the unfinished business for my character, at least, although based on Tatum, was that he never got the chance to apologize, or at least say to the man who he paralyzed, I wish it hadn't happened. I wish things had gone a different way. So in real life, the man whose hit paralyzed the other, they never spoke. So there was never any kind of reconciliation of any kind on both sides. And in the play, that to me sparked my imagination, because boy, what you want conflict in a play. That's what a play is all about. And so this deep conflict of this unfinished, unreconciled business, to me, is what can really drive a play. And early on in writing that play, I had the football player, that he was kind of easy, because I knew football, easy is too strong a word, but I felt like I had his voice down in my head. And so writing him was fairly straightforward. But then, and this is not mystical, although it sounds like it, somebody else came into the room. I didn't want it to be a one-man play. So there had to be someone he'd interact with. And I didn't want it to be one of those plays, those two people plays where one person's telling a story and the other person just sits there. I wanted there to be kind of an evenly matched.
Yep.
Did we lose him? Did he freeze?
He froze.
Oh, all right. Well, so
what happened?
Well,
what
at least you're here, Sonja.
Hi.
We'll see if David. Maybe Bob, send David. Send him a direct message, maybe, and just see if and we can have him go out and come back in again. And Sonja and I'll.
Yeah, I have my cable right into my.
Yeah,
I have
you have
like
your Ethernet cable in.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can get him back. We'll have Bob and Erica work on that. There we go. Oh, he's back. He's back.
You're muted.
But you're muted.
So I wasn't going to do anything with the play, playing the assassin, until I submitted it for a one-day workshop at Interact Theater, and Craig Lucas, who's a Tony-nominated playwright, most famously of Reckless,
Blue Window,
Blue Window, Prelude to a Kiss. He was running the workshop, and he had read all the excerpts beforehand, and he said to me, as we're standing waiting for the bathroom at our break, he turned to me and he said, "This football play that you wrote, what are you going to do with it?" And I said, "I don't know, I just wrote it." He said, "It's really good, and you need to do something with it, and you've got to finish the play." And so he kind of made me go back and take a closer look at it, something that I just kind of tossed off, and really made me get to work on it. But it was all about unfinished business. We all have these things in our lives. And to me, that made an interesting play, because that's where the conflict came from, this unfinished business, that at least at first is kind of under the surface. And these guys have to kind of pick each other apart to get to the heart, to get to the core of things.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about, David, we talked about maybe looking at you did an adaptation of a Strindberg play called The Stronger, right? That we know. What made you want to tackle that one? I know you said you have a love of all things, of Ibsen, of Strindberg, were you thinking of it's a perfect play for Sonja. Were you thinking of was there something specific that led you to want to rethink that?
Well, one of the things was you and I had a conversation, and you're a big Strindberg fan.
It's all about
too.
Tina.
It's all about Tina.
Oh, was it me on this one?
Yeah, you and I had a conversation, and I had done a couple adaptations of things, and I've written plays that have 8 characters, 10 characters. There's something that I have to admit that there's something about a small number of characters that really excites me as a writer. Putting a couple people in a room where they can't escape, where they have to just hash it out, really excites me as a writer, because it's so primal, it's so exposed. And The Stronger is a 2-character play. And so you and I had that conversation. And so I'd read many Strindberg plays, and I read this one, And I really liked it because it's two women and one hardly says anything. It's all about body language and leaning in and leaning out and all that stuff. And then the other one just kind of goes on this long monologue. But through this interaction, you kind of get this world. You kind of understand their whole relationship, the resentments, the jealousies, the relationships they've had and how they've impinged on each other's lives. And I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. And I love Strindberg. I don't know how much he needs to be adapted, but I thought, let me make it a little more contemporary if I can. Maybe some of the language a little more contemporary. Some of the references maybe are a little older, and I thought maybe updating that might be kind of fun. And I thought it might be fun to play with. And it's always fun to work with my wife, the rare times I get that chance.
Sonja, have you ever done any other Strindberg or Ibsen?
I have never done Ibsen or Strindberg. I used to do a horrible job at a Miss Julie monologue for auditions. I think I was probably totally overwrought. I was the young, I don't know, actor and just, oh, my bird, that kind of thing. The bird and the, do you remember when I used to go to like Washington and do these horrible auditions, and I don't know.
I have one note for you, Sonja. Take it down a few notes.
Take it down about 5 notches.
I remember we
scream the whole monologue.
It was funny because when we would audition for plays together back when I acted very briefly, I acted in high school and stuff. We went to an audition together once. It was for Crimes of the Heart. Remember that, Sonja? And it was in Philadelphia, and we made some lovely friends on it. Sonja was so nervous about it because she was in that zone where she was, trying to get good at it, and she got amazing. She eventually got amazing at it. And I just I just sauntered in like, I don't really care. And she was smoking like a chimney. I remember she was smoking at the time. And it was really nerve-wracking for her early on. But you got pretty awesome.
You got cast and I didn't.
I feel like a real shithead.
Well, yeah, I don't know, Sonja. I do think so much of the chemistry, the chemistry is always just so important in, you're talking about having fun and wanting to have fun. And I just am thinking about being over at the Bethany Mission Gallery with you and John Sack and and Bob Schmidt and the door and Tomas and, and Carlos playing the fireman and the martinis and how much that play changed from the 2020 version, from the 2017 version. And basically because we were at the very end of, it was the last play we did before the pandemic, happened.
Did you two prefer a version of the two? Did you prefer one in the end? Because I guess some people more traditional would prefer the first one, and then you did the 60s thing, which was
they were both really fun. They were just different. I don't know. I had fun in both of them in a very different way. The first one was a little more difficult because we were just trying to, at least for me, trying to get a handle on the language, and John Sack and I don't know if we ever got those lines just the way they were written. And we tried so hard every single time. We would practice it over and over and over again, both times,
very complicated.
It was hard to get it right, but we tried.
Oh no, you guys did a great job. And he
did a great job. He's amazing.
You get lost in there and there's all kinds of different things at play because there's not a whole lot to hold on to because so much is repeated in look at the slightly different, I don't know, David. I mean, I liked the second version. I mean, they were both equally fun and just very different. And the second one, of course, we were all so feeling the weight of so many years of, this 2017, 18, 19, 20. By the time we got to that point, it just seemed inevitable, not inevitable, but just like we had to do something. We had to say something about it, about the weight of it all. Which is where Erica Holscher did such a beautiful job with the costumes, and we had to take it further because we had gotten into this place of just sheer beyond absurdity, is what it is.
Real life.
The looseness. They were both loose, but I mean, there was something about that 60s version which perhaps lends itself to looseness. It was The body language.
Just, and John, just the wig, John and the wig and Bob's, I don't know, but I think maybe this is a great time to ask our, well, let me say this. I just want to thank you both so much for, like Sonja, for all the many years of just joy on stage. And I hope we just keep doing it. And David, for all your great work in Philadelphia and around the country. And I think it's pretty amazing that you were sitting on a stage with that many playwrights commenting on your work. And so I can't, I'm excited to see the next projects that come about. And I'm so delighted you guys are here to celebrate 1 year with us. And I just want to ask Erica and Bob to come on as we get down to the 6 o'clock hour, because I just want to personally thank both of them for all of their years of making, no one ever, we don't bring Bob and Erica on very much. They're too busy doing the work behind the scenes. So thank you all so very, very much.
An honor.
Yeah, I can't wait. Bob, where are you tonight?
This is, I'm on a satellite of love.
Oh, you are. Satellite
Yes,
of love, Bob, always. And Erica, where are you?
I'm in Pee Wee's Playhouse.
Well,
Come on down.
Doesn't it always just feel like when we're
to.
rehearsing an IRC show that it's pretty much Pee Wee's Playhouse all the time?
Yeah.
So
Pretty much.
yeah. Well, Erica and Bob, thank you so much. I thought the audience really needs to see all the hard work you guys are doing in fielding the questions. And the great thing is now we can really talk about, when we get back out onto the stage, when that will be, we can continue to have the conversations with the playwrights, with the actors, and talk about all the great backstage stuff that happens, which I'm really looking forward to. So Sonja, thank you very much. David, thank you. I really do want to do that. Let's do that. Strindberg.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it,
man.
And
I'm playing Miss Julie, by the way.
Yeah, you're
I've
playing Miss
decided.
Julie in the Strindberg.
Bring the bird.
Right.
Bring the bird.
If we do that,
I'm going to bring the bird. I actually had a bird that I had made that I.
Well, Sonja, if we do this, you're definitely the one that's talking.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Don't you think, David?
Sure.
I think it could go either way. I was trying to figure that out and I couldn't tell. I think that's Sonja's going to be like, oh, I've got all these lines to learn. If it was anybody but Tina.
But the great part is it doesn't matter what you say, Sonja. I'm just going to be sitting there like listening. So
judging your character.
Right. But in the most lovable way, Sonja, or I'll bring it to the table.
It's a pretty intense play. It's a pretty intense play, which is what
Definitely.
I love about Strindberg.
Yeah. Well, you guys, thank you so much for being here today to help me celebrate. This is making me super excited about being back on the stage soon and seeing your work on the stage. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Bye. And thanks to all of you for being here today with us to celebrate our 1 year anniversary. Oh, there we go. I want to make sure that you're with us next Saturday when Joanna Rote is going to be back with us. Joanna and I have a mutual love of Tennessee Williams. And she was on the show right after we got started last year, and we had wonderful conversations about the books that she's written. She's been a director and an actor and ran the theater program over at Villanova, professor emeritus for many, many years. And we share this love of Tennessee Williams. So we're going to be talking specifically about the two-character play, which is a play that we have on the table here at the IRC that we're hoping to bring in for you all this year or in 2022. And we're going to talk about the eccentricities of Nightingale and also Summer and Smoke. So that's next week. I hope you'll join us. And thanks so much for making it possible that we can celebrate this 1 year anniversary. To everyone, I hope you have a very safe week ahead.